Nothing can stop me, I'm all the way.
How's it going, guys? Public Safety Network here. Today we're going to do another on the job. I actually got this one by request, and we are going to cover the TSA, or the Transportation Security Administration. Most people know these as the guys in the blue shirts that do the screening at the airport, but there's a little more in depth to the TSA, and possibly career-wise, it could be a good move for those looking to stay in security while still having an opportunity at retirement and good benefits. So we're going to kind of start with a little history of the TSA. The TSA was created on November 19th of 2001 with the passing of the Aviation and Security Transportation Act, which was signed into law by George W. Bush after the events of 9/11. It created the TSA, who would be in charge of protecting all mass transit systems, including airports, railways, and a few other types of mass transportation. They stayed under the Department of Transportation until 2003, where President Bush also signed in the Homeland Security Act, which created the parent agency of the Department of Homeland Security. The TSA was then transferred. So that's literally all there about is. The TSA has been around for about 17 years now. They've been obviously in and out of the news for a variety of different controversies, including accusations of racial profiling and a few others, but although it is one of the largest employers of the federal government. The TSA currently has 55,000 screeners. The main job is their job is to screen luggage. Usually when you go through checkpoints to your gate to look for illegal or prohibited items such as bombs, guns, knives, drugs, and whatever they deem prohibited. Obviously it changes quite often depending on a variety of different factors. So screener is going to be the main job. It's also known as TSO, or Transportation Security Officer. There are different levels. I've seen there's lead transportation security officers, supervisory transportation security officers, and then I think master transportation security officers. So there is obviously room for promotion based on obviously the size of the airport that you are going to be working at. But again, their main job is to screen. There was a position called, I think it was called Behavioral Observation Officer or something like that. It was a program where they would have plainclothes TSA agents observe people's behavior and then obviously dictated who needed screening and who didn't. I believe this program has been very widely discontinued due to obviously accusations of things like racial profiling. So I don't believe that job exists anymore. A few other jobs that are available to the TSA. They do have canine teams. The canine teams are usually used to check cargo and passengers for explosives. It is a very sought-after job. They actually just had a mass hiring for this about a couple months ago. Again, it's a very good job, well-paying job. I think the TSO average starting salary is around anywhere between $15 and $18 an hour, and then obviously you do get what's known as locality pay, so you get a bit of a pay increase based on what location you're at, and obviously based on the needs of the agency. Other jobs include TSA inspector. Their job is to inspect domestic cargo, looking for, again, illegal items like guns, drugs, bombs, anything that could cause harm to aircraft or aircraft passengers or personnel. So that is another job that is often seen. And then obviously they have what's known as VIPR teams. VIPR teams are a kind of hybrid team of law enforcement, TSA canine handlers, and maybe a couple transportation security officers, and their job is to kind of do a wide sweep of airports, checking for credible threats to the airport or whatever other mass transit system there is. And then last but not least is the famous Air Marshals. Air Marshals they are undercover law enforcement officers who dress in plain clothes and carry firearms onto planes in order to prevent hijackings and to prevent another September 11th type attack. So there are not very many Air Marshals. I believe as the last calculated, there's only about 900 Air Marshals for the whole country. And there have been criticisms of the program about whether that type of program will continue. But like I said, these are some of the main components job-wise of the TSA. Like I said, in order to apply for these jobs, you go to usajobs.gov. You can type in Transportation Security Administration and whatever location you're looking at, and it'll usually bring up every available job posting that they have for whatever position, whether it's TSO, Inspector, Air Marshal, or whatever. As mentioned, previously. The pay does vary. Usually I've seen between $15 and $18 an hour, and then obviously a bonus for locality pay. Besides the pay, it is also, because it is a federal employment job, you do receive federal benefits, which are fairly good, including healthcare, dental, vision, generous PTO program, and a variety of other things. And along with it comes the pension system. Federal employees pay into the federal retirement system, which after 20 years of service, they receive a retirement effectively for the rest of their lives. However, being able to collect the retirement, there is a few caveats to that, especially if you start young and obviously try to retire young, with the only exception being Federal Air Marshals. Federal Air Marshals do pay into a federal retirement system, but it is a separate retirement system where they receive a bonus, I believe 25% increase due to their law enforcement status. So law enforcement agents do pay into the federal system, however they do have a separate retirement for law enforcement. So if you are looking for a starter career, TSA can be very beneficial. I know a lot of people tend to make fun of them for being incompetent, wannabe cop type job, but realistically it's a very good job. You have, again, good pay, good benefits, pension system, but you also have the opportunity to transfer to other agencies. The thing about the federal system is, because it is national, you have the ability to change within any agency. So if I wanted to say go from like the TSA and go work for ICE or U.S. Marshal Service or DEA, as long as they meet the qualifications, it makes it much easier, because at that point I'm considered inter department transfer. So I can go between departments usually fairly easier than an outside person would be able to do so. So these all things to consider when looking at jobs. Again, the federal government has some security jobs. They are usually fairly good jobs, and so I would never deny an opportunity at advancing your career based on whatever your goals are, whether that is to somehow end up at a federal agency, or simply to get some experience, or even looking for a job that you could possibly retire at or move up the chain. So again, guys, this was more of a quick one. Given a brief overview of job descriptions, the history of the agency. Like I said, the TSA, because it is a fairly new type agency, there really isn't a whole lot I can really more talk about it. It's only been around, less than 2 decades, versus a lot of the other jobs I talk at, which have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So that's kind of the most I can give you. I'm a little bit in the end here. The process does take a little while. It can take up to 3 to 6 months. You do, including initial application. You usually do an assessment. Then a lot of times you do background and credit check. You'll do a tour of your facility, whatever airport you decide to work at, and then I believe a few more steps in the process, and then last but not least, you will go to FLETC, or the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which is in Glencoe, Georgia. Previously, the TSA did all on-the-job training, but the TSA found that this was inefficient, because based on the airport you went to, you received you could either receive really good training or subpar training, and so they felt that sending all TSA screeners to the same training academy for, I think it's 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, don't quote me, to get the same base training. Almost all TSA jobs go to FLETC in Georgia, with the exception of the canine handlers. The canine handlers will receive their training at Lackland Air Force Base and San Antonio, Texas. But again, that's kind of a little add on the end that I forgot to talk about. So like I said, if you have any more questions about the TSA, I can answer them as best as I can. I've been through the process, although I did not take the job, so I can kind of give you some tips and tricks about the process. Jobs wise, guys, it's very easy to find. You can look it up on usajobs.gov. Even Wikipedia has a pretty good breakdown of the agency and itself and how it's organized. So thanks for listening, guys. I really hope everyone has a good weekend. Stay safe out there, and if you're working tonight, enjoy yourselves.